Gavin Newsom is reportedly under growing pressure, at least if recent reports and behind-the-scenes conversations are to be believed.
I think it's been a tyranny of about 25 years of trying to get the refining business to leave California. They've been putting in regulations and bureaucracy and taxes and programs to push us out of the state.
California has spent years, really decades, going after the fossil fuel business in the name of environmentalism, and it's a lie. Saying it was planning, the state, a clean energy future when it was all a con.
Multiple sources suggest Newsom is reacting urgently as major corporations signal plans to pull out of California. Why does that matter? Because critics warned this outcome was coming for years, and those warnings were largely ignored.
In the world, and these politicians, they don't govern for results. They don't say, hey, what's worked really well in the past, and let's try to make it work really well here. In California, it's I need to govern for a narrative. I need there to be anything shoplifted under $1,000, we don't need to arrest you for that. We don't need cash bail. Okay, we don't need to arrest criminals. We want this green utopia. And like what happens with that is you go from 2%, you start at 13% of the U.S. oil production in the U.S. Now we're down to 2%.
According to first-hand accounts, conditions across California have reached troubling levels. Under Gavin Newsom's leadership, critics argue the state has drifted towards serious economic risk, driven by steep taxes, heavy regulations, and an ever-expanding bureaucracy that touches nearly every industry, especially energy. California was once a dominant force, producing roughly 13% of the nation's oil and helping fuel the broader U.S. economy. Today, that figure has dropped to about 2%. This dramatic shift reflects years of policy decisions that placed ideology ahead of practical energy needs. Business owners and workers alike report feeling squeezed by constant tax hikes and regulatory hurdles. As companies consider relocating to more business-friendly states, California, once synonymous with opportunity, now teeters on economic stagnation. Without meaningful adjustments, the state risks losing the qualities that made it iconic for generations.
Gavin Newsom's state is having a sudden change of heart. The pompadour of pomposity himself just signed a bill to fast-track approvals for 2,000 new oil and gas wells annually. This is near Bakersfield, California. Kern County, trying to keep energy companies from fleeing California. It may be too little too late. And Newsom, and frankly, all the people in California who voted for him, and all the other Democrats, they are getting what they deserve and what they voted for.
Although Gavin Newsom recently approved legislation allowing the development of 2,000 new oil wells, many argue the move came far too late. By that point, much of the damage had already been done. Newsom delayed action while major energy companies, including industry leaders like Chevron, quietly shut down operations and shifted investments to states with more favorable policies. When the law finally passed, jobs had already disappeared, revenues had declined, and domestic oil production continued to fall. This delayed response highlights a broader criticism of California's leadership: slow decision-making, reactive governance, and an unwillingness to face difficult realities until reversal becomes nearly impossible. For a state that once led the nation in energy output, the situation underscores how critical timing is in leadership.
California has to import half of the crude that it's still able to refine in the state from places like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Brazil. And the CO2 emissions, the smog and pollution from the tankers that have to ship it in has caused emissions to go up and pollution to go up. So it's actually damaging human health in California because they've tried to phase out fossil fuel.
Critics point to this outcome as a foreseeable result of recent policy choices. Gavin Newsom appeared to believe that California could lower carbon emissions by aggressively taxing and regulating fossil fuel companies, effectively pushing them out. On paper, the idea seemed simple: pressure the industry and emissions decline. In practice, the opposite happened. Forcing production out of state did not reduce demand for fossil fuels. Instead, it increased reliance on imported energy, often produced with higher overall emissions. What was presented as bold environmental leadership has, according to critics, produced counterproductive results. The lesson they emphasize is clear. Symbolic policies are not the same as effective solutions. When messaging takes priority over results, problems persist beneath the surface while the appearance of progress masks growing setbacks.
I lived in California for a long time, and I used to say, like, the crazy people in this country just keep moving west, and like it just stops in California because they'll fall in the ocean if they keep going any further. And like there couldn't be a truer statement in the world. And these politicians, they don't govern for results. They don't say, hey, what's worked really well in the past, and let's try to make it work really well here.
Newsom's approach to criminal justice reform has also drawn criticism for contributing to rising insecurity. Policies framed as compassion-driven reforms have reduced penalties to a point where disorder feels increasingly normalized. Theft under $1,000 is often treated as a minor offense, emboldening repeat offenders and devastating small businesses that cannot absorb constant losses. The elimination of cash bail has allowed some individuals to cycle repeatedly through the system, leaving communities to deal with the fallout. Meanwhile, permissive enforcement has allowed encampments to expand across sidewalks, parks, and public spaces, altering once thriving neighborhoods. What is promoted as empathy, critics argue, has drifted into dysfunction, with ordinary Californians bearing the consequences. This approach, they say, excuses harmful behavior rather than addressing root causes, weakening accountability and stability statewide.
It is an unbelievable state. It is one of the most, if they not most beautiful state in the union. You have technology, you have Hollywood, you have amazing natural resources. Yet somehow, these lefties have found a way to almost completely ruin it.
And gas is expensive there because of all the regulations, all the rules about the blends. You're talking about the oil that they use to refine, that they have to bring it in, but then they want to make it, cleaner than clean. It's not even, something that you need to do. Our oil here in the United States is very clean. The technology is bringing us cleaner oil, but I don't feel bad for these politicians at all.
Some commentators argue this outcome reflects voter choices. Californians were presented with alternatives and opportunities to shift direction, yet repeatedly supported the same leadership and policies. Elections have consequences, and those consequences are now visible. Gas prices remain high. Living costs continue to strain working families. Once dominant industries are beginning to fracture. Hollywood, long a symbol of California's economic power, is losing ground. Tourism, another key sector, has declined. Businesses are relocating, residents are leaving, and the image of the California dream is increasingly fading. This isn't a matter of bad luck or unfortunate timing, critics say. It is the cumulative result of repeated political decisions. At some point, accountability matters, and responsibility cannot be endlessly redirected.
They get what they vote for, but I sort of feel for people in California because not everyone is voting for this, and so I'm reminded of our plight here in New York City,
Exactly.
where we're not all voting for, socialism to come and nip at our heels, but it's happening, and so how do you change it? I don't know.
California was a red state until there was a couple of judicial rulings in the 80s, and then Reagan's amnesty. The massive amounts of illegal immigration, and then the next generation's not illegal.
Right.
So you have imported a new population into the state over the last generation, and now it's the bluest of blue.
California and New York now face strikingly similar challenges, and critics argue this is no coincidence. Both are deep blue states led by officials guided strongly by ideology, advancing policies some believe are accelerating decline. Rather than prioritizing affordability, public safety, and economic resilience, leadership in both states appears focused on ideological experiments with real-world consequences. In New York, leaders openly promote expanded government control while overlooking warning signs already visible in the city. In California, Newsom has turned the state into a proving ground for high taxes, aggressive regulations, and social agendas critics say prioritize symbolism over results. The outcome is predictable. Businesses leave, residents relocate, crime concerns rise, and the middle class erodes. Once cultural and economic giants, These states now risk long-term decline while leaders insist everything is working as intended.
Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have already proven their incompetence and poor leadership during the Los Angeles wildfires. Now, as we experience rampant lawlessness and civil unrest, it's never been more clear they're unable to respond effectively and responsibly during calamity. Whether it's sheer incompetence or outright malevolence, the reality is stark. California's in a state of turmoil, and I ask my fellow Angelenos, why are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass still in office?
One reason these leaders remain in power, critics argue, is the absence of meaningful political competition. In deep blue states, party loyalty often outweighs performance. Voters are conditioned to support the party label regardless of results, creating an accountability gap. For figures like Gavin Newsom, policy failures rarely threaten re-election, reducing pressure to course correct. As long as internal party hurdles are cleared, statewide victories are almost guaranteed. This environment slows reform and allows ineffective policies to linger. When consequences are minimal, urgency disappears, and residents are left dealing with rising costs, declining safety, and a diminished quality of life. One-party dominance, critics say, breeds complacency and governance focused more on optics than outcomes.
But it's very frustrating because of the way the census is done, they don't get penalized. You have the numbers of people, the businesses and residents leaving California because of the high cost of living, because of crime in some of the cities, et cetera. And so their number of seats in Congress doesn't change, their electoral college votes don't change, the aid from the federal government doesn't change. California has 2 billion barrels of oil in reserves. They could go after that. They've been refusing to do it, like New York refusing to do shale drilling, et cetera. These states have penalize themselves and their citizens by denying them $150,000 a year jobs, and also because price of gas is $4.65 instead of $3.20 around the country.
That dynamic becomes far more dangerous on the national stage. A growing stream of critical reporting is already casting doubt on Gavin Newsom's potential presidential ambitions. National elections offer no insulation, and a candidate's record carries far more weight outside a deep blue stronghold. Voters across the country are paying close attention to California's struggles and are unlikely to be persuaded by polished messaging alone. History offers clear examples. Kamala Harris's national aspirations faltered when voters questioned her leadership strength. Similar scrutiny eventually followed Joe Biden as concerns about decisiveness mounted. Newsom may soon face a similar reckoning. State-level protection disappears nationally, and unresolved problems can quickly define a political future.
You should not trust politicians to fix the problems that they created. Like, they're the wrong people. And I'm glad you brought up this flip-flop. So he says they're going to fast-track 2,000 wells. It reminds me of the fires in LA and all the fast-tracking that was supposed to happen for permits. I don't think that fast-tracking actually got on the fast track, because these guys, like, fundamentally are not interested in making fossil fuels more available. So if you trust the people who broke it to fix it, it will stay broke, only it will be more expensive for it to stay broke, which is what's happening in California.
At the center of this debate is a fundamental question. Gavin Newsom presided over the period when California's current challenges intensified. So why should voters trust him to reverse course now? From economic pressures to regulatory overload, these issues developed during his tenure. Californians also remember the devastating wildfires and Newsom's pledges to streamline permits, cut red tape, and accelerate rebuilding. Those promises sounded decisive at the time, yet progress was slow and bureaucratic obstacles remained. Communities waited while systems stayed unchanged. That history matters. If swift action didn't materialize during a visible crisis like the fires, skeptics ask, what confidence is there that he can suddenly halt corporate exits or restore economic confidence? Trust is built through outcomes, not assurances, and critics say the results have fallen short.
Never underestimate, though, the power of political ambition and how that might drive Newsom and his ilk in that state to change their ways, because the legislation that was passed out of Sacramento, it's not only the drilling, but it also allows the governor to suspend requirements for the cleaner summer blends of gasoline to protect against extraordinary price spikes during that time of the year. They also will allow the consideration of importing gasoline blends from other states that don't comply with the very, very strict blends.
In the end, California's situation serves as a broader warning. Years of ideologically driven policy, delayed responses, and political insulation have produced consequences that can no longer be ignored. Businesses are leaving, living costs are rising, public safety concerns persist, and the quality of life that once defined the state is slipping away. Gavin Newsom may now be reacting to the fallout, but leadership is measured by prevention, not reaction. Promises made after damage is done cannot erase years of missteps. What deepens concern is the lack of urgency to change direction, fueled by political security rather than accountability. On a national stage, these realities will matter far more than speeches or party loyalty. California's challenges are no longer local. They are visible nationwide and may ultimately shape Newsom's legacy more than his ambitions. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you found it valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.